lots of racing news coming up. It's great to be back with you. I had a long hiatus, had a very busy post-hurricane season, as you can imagine, down here in Florida. But you know what? We're going to start today with why NASCAR sucks and things they can do to get it back, because it was pathetic to watch the Daytona 500 this year. It's one of my favorite races of all time, and I go back to when Richard Petty was an extremely competitive and winning driver in NASCAR. So my legacy as a NASCAR fan goes back to the 60s. For most of you, you weren't even born then, but stock car racing was completely different then. They actually raced stock cars that were modified. And of course, things have changed over the years, and safety and all that, I am all for. But they have also made the series so sanitary and so dysfunctional that purist fans like myself can no longer enjoy the races. So I'm going to give you a couple of things that I think NASCAR could do. So if you're listening, NASCAR, and I was on the former NASCAR council myself, here's some things NASCAR ought to consider, and they should do, to try to get their base back. And I'm coming from a guy that sat in traffic when they had almost 220,000 people at Daytona for the first race of the year, and I think this year they called it a sellout, but there was only 100,000 seats in the infield. So, you know, they're calling sellouts with half the people they have, because they eliminated, you know, about 40,000 seats on the backstretch that you may or may not have known about. So, first thing you do to reclaim NASCAR is race back to a yellow flag when it is merited, and no racing to a yellow flag. Eliminate all this garbage with these segments and finishing them with a green white checker to eliminate the segment. This is stock car racing, and part of the elements of stock car racing is there is an endurance effect. And if you have a 500-mile race, let's have a 500-mile race, not two 125-mile races and one 250-mile race. So I don't care if you award points at certain parts of the race. As a matter of fact, I believe back in the old days, under the old point system, you got money for leading a lap, you got money for the halfway leader and points. So it's not unknown to NASCAR to not give points or money to certain areas of the race to keep it competitive. But if it's warranted, keep the green flag going. You know, if you build a lead, you deserve to lose it on the track, not because NASCAR mandates that we're not getting enough commercial time here in with their TV contracts. You know, it doesn't matter. Ratings are down. Award points anywhere along the way that you want to, but just keep the cars racing. And I think that will help bring it back. And then as part of that, never close pit road. Never close pit road unless it is physically blocked by cars because of an accident. And if you watch F1, you'll see that pit strategy becomes all-encompassing with them. NASCAR used to use pit strategy as part of race strategy, but now since we just flag a yellow flag so everybody can come down, everybody gets a reset, it doesn't make any sense. So keep pit road open. I don't mind pit road speeds, we got to be safe, but keep it open. During yellow flags, during segment racing, there should be at no time that pit road is closed to competitors unless the track is physically blocked. Next, let's race back to the start-finish line. So let's say you have a caution and you're at Richmond, which is a 3/4 of a mile track, okay, and you're on the backstretch. And the top 8 are racing, but 9, 10, and 13 cause a caution flag. And so that part of the field is going to be frozen at the caution flag from 9th place back. But for those top 8 that were not part of the caution, let them race around to the start-finish line, and wherever they end up past the start-finish line, they'll have plenty of time to slow down. You got to slow down for turn 1 anyway, so they'll have plenty of time to slow down, avoid any of the confusion, and rank them that way. Race back to the start-finish line on cautions, okay? And if you have a race that is being decided on the last lap, if there's a caution flag, or if there is a wreck, let it happen. The race will be over. Let them race around, because that truly allows the competitive nature and fires of NASCAR to explode. So, race back to that caution flag or that start-finish line on caution flags. Unless, of course, the wreck is at the start-finish line. But come on, a little common sense, which I haven't seen a lot of in NASCAR, a little common sense will tell you when they can race back to a caution flag and when they cannot. Everybody get me there? I'd like to know what you think. Please leave your comments below. Again, eliminate these multiple green, white, checker, these overtimes and stuff like that. You're making the races too long. Daytona this year was an 8-hour ordeal. Yeah, it was because of the weather. Guess what? If you can't get a 3-hour race done in a 4-hour window, hey, we're going to call it off for the day. We're going to go back and we'll see you tomorrow. Or do something, but don't sit there and have people hanging. Have programming, Fox. Have programming, NBC, that you can fill in so you don't have these talking heads saying the same thing every 20 minutes. And I'll tell you what, Larry McReynolds, brilliant engineer, okay? But maybe it's time for him to go. Maybe it's time for Larry to call it a day. Because it's no longer just a chess match. Because they have taken the chess match out of NASCAR and quite frankly made it old maid and checker. Also eliminating these multiple green, white, checker finishes. You know, why even race 400, 500 miles to begin with? NASCAR has become the NBA, where the game doesn't matter, only the last 2 minutes. Now, you work all day to put yourself in a position to win. And if there's an accident behind you and you're not involved in that accident, and you've got a shot to win the race, but they throw a caution flag because it's not fair, well, where's it fair to you that have worked all your entire day to put yourself in a position to win the race, and then on the next green-white checker, because of either bad luck or a poor decision or something, your race gets totally thrown. You go from first to worst of the last ones or whatever. Or you get yourself involved in another accident, and all you're doing is beating up sheet metal and costing these teams hundreds of thousands of dollars in useless wrecks. For what? For TV ratings that are not there. Come on, guys. Think about that. Put a time limit on the races. Again, a 3-hour race ought to take 4.5 hours. If you can't do it, then, you know, then bye-bye. I realize that they can't race in the rain. I understand there are some limitations. I get it. On a road race, though, you can race in the rain. So, you know, by all means, don't red flag a road race unless it's a deluge. You know what? It'll make the engineers come up with better wiper systems. Remember, win Sunday, sell Monday? They did that over the years in the 60s and the 70s to sell cars on Monday. And so racing was very much a part of the scene in automotive manufacturing. So, think about that. If you're going to race in the rain, Goodyear could come up with a better Gatorback tire. The engineers could come up with a better wiper system. All you got to do is call your buddy down at the World Endurance Championship, get one of the wiper systems from them. Okay? If you have to put a rear defroster on the car so they can see behind them, that's fine. You know, do what you got to do. But make it so they can race in the rain. Not on ovals. I'm only talking on road courses, obviously. But then keep to a strict time limit. And if it looks like your 200 lap race or your 50 lap race or whatever lap race can't be done in that time limit, then when you have a half hour to go, you tell every team there's a half hour to go in the race, calculate that number of laps, it'd be at 10, 15 or whatever, and then that's going to be the end of your race. That's how you do it, and that's how you keep people interested in the race. You let them know what's going on and when it's going to end. I didn't watch the end of the Daytona 500 because I fell asleep because I was so bored. Atlanta wasn't a whole lot better either. Okay, put an alternative tire compound down that race drivers have to use at least once during a race. Just like IndyCar that has 2 compounds and Formula One that requires 2 compounds, that you have to change tire compounds during the race. Maybe in stock car racing you could have a hard and a harder compound, and every competitor has to at least use a separate compound at least one time and at least for say 10 laps during a race. So they can't just pop in during a caution flag, put on the compound, and then come around on the next caution lap and take that compound off. It has to be raced under green flag conditions at least 10 laps or till the next caution flag, whichever comes first. and then they can change back. But you know what? It might put some strategy back into the game, and it'll make the race engineers and the pit crew even more a part of the race than it already is. I think that might be one of the greatest ideas that would ever help NASCAR regain the dominance that it had here in the United States. You know, many of these changes came about when Monster Energy became the title sponsor for NASCAR, and they were going to be like a 10-year sponsor, and they thought this was great, and they were going to capture the youth crowd, and they were going for that, you know, perfect 18 to 24 or 24 to 32 demographic to help increase the value of stock car racing. And you know what? Monster Energy opted and said, we're done after 3 years, because it was costing them a fortune. They weren't getting the marketing push that they wanted. But what happened was these lingering differences in automobiles, in the rules and stuff, kind of stayed. The spec car stayed. I didn't have a problem with the wings, but I liked the wings actually, but they went back. The wicker bills were great. You know, there was a time when racing at Daytona was so good and so competitive. It was really, really great to watch. And even at other racetracks, it was fun. It was also great fun back in the day watching Kyle Petty lap the field at Rockingham, because he had that place dialed in. And that's not an easy racetrack, because the sands of South Carolina, those ocean sands, would get in that track and it just destroyed tires. But somehow, Kyle Petty's team had that place wired for a couple of years. So, you know, it's neat that people are dominant. It's neat that certain cars might dominate at certain racetracks. It's part of the fun and the strategy. Even when you look at Formula One automobiles, you can tell that while Max Verstappen 2 years ago won just about everything, sometimes his car wasn't best. Sometimes a Ferrari was a better car that race, or maybe the McLarens, especially last year, those cars. So there were, you know, different horses for different courses, and that was part of NASCAR's charm back in the day. Because if you were a Ford fan, a Chevy fan, a Chrysler fan, or whatever, you knew, hey, we may not have got them this year, but or this time, but next week one of our tracks is coming up, and I expect to see my driver do much better. So consider that, NASCAR. You know, I'm just saying, go back to the old rules. It might make things better. I don't think the playoff system is the best system for NASCAR. I think I liked the point system before, when, you know, you race till the end of the season and the guy with the most points won. It kept everybody in the game. It kept everybody competitive, because now when you have these point systems, with these playoffs, you have guys that didn't make it. They want to be spoilers. There's a lot of animus sometimes between drivers, and sometimes that guy that's not in it might take that guy who is in it out just out of spite, or because his teammate's in it. So I would eliminate that everybody drives their own race, and let them get on with it that way. And finally, and this is just a short list, there'll be more to come, why don't you make qualifying mean something again? I used to love two-day qualifying, where they had the top 20 would get in, and then they would have the bottom 20 on the next day, or the top 30, and then the final 12. It made for a funner qualifying, but, you know, make it count for something. Maybe make it count for extra points if you got a pole, or if you got a top 5 qualifying, maybe you got points for that. Maybe you get, you know, 5 extra points for pole, 4 for 2, 3, 2, and 1. You know, it'll make it more fun. And then the last thing, actually, I just kind of thought of this. Why don't you use a podium system in NASCAR? Works in IndyCar. It works in Formula One, it works in World Endurance, it works in every other form of racing. Why not have a podium? Bring the top 3 competitors up so everybody can celebrate the wins. First, second, and third. Hey, horse races pay on that. NASCAR should too. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts on why NASCAR sucks and how we could bring it back to prominence. We'll do some more because Formula One's coming up. And I got my Formula One hat on, and I'm getting ready to talk about the season opener. So until then, please leave your comments below. Please subscribe. Hit that like button if you would, and I'll